Good evening and welcome to Discover Life Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm really happy that each and every one of you is here tonight. We have a very special presentation tonight by Dr. David Allen. David Allen has served as an internal medicine doctor here in Tuolumne County for many years. He's very well respected. He has recently transitioned his practice to focusing on Alzheimer's prevention. And he has taken special classes to be able to really give us the information that we urgently need tonight in order to do our best to protect ourselves from that terrible disease. My grandfather actually died of Alzheimer's, and so I'm going to be really listening carefully tonight to the wonderful information that Dr. David Allen has. So I don't need to say anything else except for I'd like to pray together before he begins his talk. Dear God, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your love. Father, tonight as we learn a little bit about health, a little bit about your word, we pray that you would teach and bless us, your people. And we thank you in Jesus' name, amen. Dr. Allen, the time is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Let's see if we can get the slides working here. There we go. Hey, it's bigger up there. Okay, good. So it's not really about arresting Alzheimer's, but preventing Alzheimer's. And most of us, in fact, even now, when I ask somebody if they knew that Alzheimer's was prevented, Alzheimer's dementia is preventable, most people don't seem to know that. And I'm rather surprised, but a few years ago I didn't really know that either. And most of us in the medical profession had been teaching that it really wasn't preventable, and you just don't worry about it. Hopefully it won't happen. That was the extent. But it is preventable. And they estimate that there's about 6 million people in the United States with Alzheimer's currently, and in 30 years, or 2050, there will be approximately 13 million. The incidence of Alzheimer's is increasing, while most of the other diseases like diabetes, cancer have been decreasing. And I think we're kind of just catching up. And over the last few years, there's kind of been an explosion of knowledge of prevention of Alzheimer's. Let me see, kind of this, that the axiom that we all know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is more true for Alzheimer's, really, than any other disease. So Dr. Dale Bredesen wrote this book in about 2016, and he in this book describes how he's helped people reverse Alzheimer's, and he believes that about 90% of Alzheimer's are reversible. So if we expect about 13.2 million people, if 90% of that was reversible by 1950, that would only be 1.3 million people. But, you know, we know that the way it's reversible is a lot of lifestyle changes. So we know that won't happen. But for you individually to cut your risk by 90% is an amazing thing to think about. And there's a doctor, there's in the Brain and Health and Alzheimer Prevention Program in Loma Linda, there's doctors there that have co-written the book, The Alzheimer's Solution, and their first chapter says they also believe that 90% of Alzheimer's is reversible. Now, it isn't reversible once you have it. I mean, it's preventable, excuse me. It's reversible, it's preventable if you start at an early age. Dr. Bredesen recommends and what he calls a cognoscopy. You've heard of a colonoscopy. That'd be done on people at age 45 to see what risk factors they have, and to get the people that are a higher risk more aggressively into a preventative program at a younger age. So, and even the popular press. I brought some for those that have liked to. The Wall Street Journal had a 4-page report on the science of preventing Alzheimer's here. And I brought copies. We probably, Connie thought there'd be about 30 people, so I brought 30 copies. But it talks about all the things we're going to talk about here, you know, exercise, diet, cognitive training, and other things. So those that want a copy, just stop and talk to Connie. She could give you a copy of that. So this here, this is from the first part is from the AARP. It says it's not just about running 3 times a week, says Sarah Locke, Executive Director of the AARP Global Council on Brain Health. It's instead about a package of behavior including aerobic exercise, strengthening, brain training, healthy diet, sleeping, and cognitive training. So, and this is from the Wall Street Journal, which you can get a copy if you like. It says, because dementia takes decades to develop, the Wall Street Journal states the best time to focus on brain health is long before symptoms occur, ideally by midlife, if not before. Still, they emphasize it's never too late to start. So we have a program that we've had since October at Adventist Health Sonora, and most of the people that come are, you know, in their 70s or 80s and having memory problems already, and so that's when people get interested. So the main message for the public and for the younger people here is to assess your risk yourself, and to maybe consider starting earlier. You know, the pillars of the brain health program are here. Healthy diet. One of the diets that we are recommending is the MIND diet. You can get that. You can Google that, and then there's the exercise, both aerobic and strengthening program, and increase proteins and hormones in your brain that stimulate the growth of new connections and actually can stimulate new cells. BDNF, brain neurotrophic factor, is one of them. And brain exercises, we'll talk about a little about that. And proper sleep, calming the mind, fixing defects, and avoiding toxins. So the power in the diet is really these things. Might be worth, I have a handout, so if you're interested, you can just pick up the handout from Connie, and it would have these things. But the power really is in green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, berries, nuts, and flaxseed, omega-3 oils in particular. I think Dr. Ardron talked about that a little bit last night, and walnuts and fish oil. Okay, the things we ask people to avoid: butter, margarine, cheese, red meat, fried foods, and sweets all cause inflammation, and cognitive decline in Alzheimer's is a disease of inflammation. It's important to ensure adequate levels of B12 and vitamin D. These both can cause cognitive decline. There are easy blood tests. When you go to yearly physical, just ask your physician to get those checked. Most of them will comply. And you know, another thing is time-restricted feedings. There's a lot of studies out recently that shows the importance of time when our body can rebuild when we don't have food. You know, when your body's working on food, it can't repair itself. So the longer stretches of time we have when we're not eating, the better we can rebuild and repair ourselves. There's been a lot of studies on fasting and for longer periods of time, but they're finding that this time-restricted feeding idea, you can either do, see if I have, no, I don't have it. So you can do periods of time where you're not eating. 12 hours a day, all you'd have to do is go from don't eat anything after 7 at night, and you don't eat breakfast till 7 in the morning, and that will help decrease inflammation in your system. It even works better if you go 16 hours, so you could push those back a couple hours. You know, go from 6, no food after 6, no breakfast until 8, or some people go to 16 hours, push it back to 5, and maybe go to 9. And if you have that time and you're getting good sleep, your body repairs. It does what is called autophagia, where it goes around and it cleans up some of the dead cells, cancer cells. So there is a growing body of evidence that this time-restricted feeding or fasting, there's different methods of fasting. In England, it's popular to do a 5-2 diet, which has a lot of studies have shown that is a healthy way to do it. What you do is 2 days a week, you eat 500 to 600 calories a day, and the rest of the days you just eat regular. And just by having those two restricted days, it does give your body time to repair itself, to cut down on the inflammation. There's what's called senescent cells that we, as we age, some cells go bad and they start producing toxins and kind of damaging the cells around them. If your body has time where it's not working on processing food, and when the body's feeling hungry, it goes around to clean up some of the bad stuff. So we call that autophagia. So this is important for the mind because it helps to decrease inflammation. So regular exercise can help reduce your risk by Alzheimer's by 50%. So that is an important part of the program. It increases this brain neurotrophic factor. Both aerobic and the weight training exercises are needed. So we'll give you. It's important to determine your risk of dementia. AEOP can be genetically determined. Before, when we were of the mindset there wasn't anything we could do about Alzheimer's, most of the people were recommending not getting your genes checked. You just give you something to worry about. But if you can reduce your risk by 90%, if you get your genes checked when you're younger, it may give you more emphasis, more incentive to help prevent it. So I recommend people at a younger age get their APO. This is one of the genetic risk factors you can get, and one of the ways to get it is you can order it yourself to 23andMe. The only downside of going with 23andMe, you might find out that you have a brother you never knew about, so some people might be an upside. Yeah, but obesity is a risk even more than the genetics, and all these risks, even the 47% can be cut down a considerable amount, probably at least to 10%, by following the lifestyle factors. And the two risks are that probably are the most important I didn't put on here. And do you know what the two risks? The number one risk is?
Well, it looks like obesity.
No, that's on there. Number one risk is age. Okay, so that's number one risk. So, and the other, probably even number two risk is your lifestyle. You know, a lifestyle is not on there, but okay. So this is just a slide, just letting you know that obesity is a definite risk. In the green here, you see that that's the normal risk of somebody that's normal weight. If they're you know, just overweight, their risk goes up by 1.3%, you know, on the right. And if they're an obese with your BMI over 30, it goes up to 2.57%. And that is a correctable risk. The reason that it's a risk is, or one of the reasons, is there is an enzyme called insulin degrading enzyme that degrades insulin and it degrades amyloid. So if you're obese, you tend to have a lot of insulin, and so all this enzyme is going on degrading the insulin, and it's not able to help with the amyloid. Let's see. Okay, and neuroplasticity is a very hot topic that people are talking about, how you can grow your brain. Okay, so this is talking about the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the center where your memory is, and it's one of the most neuroplastic areas of your brain. Is subject to exchange. You know, we used to think that the nerves you were born with a certain number of nerves and they lasted your whole life, or they didn't, and they died and you lost them. But in adults, 700 new neurons in the hippocampus are made each day, and there's a turnover rate of about 1.7 in these neurons. There is a modest decline. So things you can do to help your brain is, you know, read newspapers and books, crossword puzzles, play a musical instrument, especially if you haven't done it before, participate in education, learn a new language, memorize scriptures or poems, and there's online computer places that'll help you too. I put this on here. Chess is to learning how to play chess is a way to help your brain. But the main reason I put it on is because of this here. It was kind of an interesting finding. You know, the grandmaster chess players lose weight when they're intense on a chess tournament, and you know the top athletes sometimes don't even spend 6,000 calories a day, but the grandmasters, so it tells you that we're really not utilizing our brains like we could, and there's a bigger potential than. And this is a picture of the hippocampus. It's your memory center. It's just a small area in the brain, and this is from a study, a 12-week study, where they had a program, intensive program at a research center where they did brain exercises, some biofeedback, they improved their diet, and in 12 weeks, about 90% of them were able on MRI to show growth in their hippocampus. This is just an example. The top is before and the bottom is after. It's hard to tell, but the computer reads it as 2.86, and then it's gone up to 3.14. And this one person, that was pretty typical. So we can grow our brain, with a little effort. And this is a picture. This is actually from the Wall Street Journal, and their point was that we can grow a brain. This is about 150 just normal volunteers that they checked between 5-year periods of the hippocampus volume, kind of a research project. They didn't tell them to do anything. And you see that some of them grew and some of them did not. From one dot to another is 5 years. So the general trend as we aging is for our hippocampus to get smaller, but doesn't have to be. And I circled here. There's this one person, age 65. I don't know if you can see it going up markedly. Well, there's 2 or 3. Maybe he had sort of a job that wasn't too exciting, and he decided, well, I always wanted to learn Spanish, or something like that. And he got growth there. Whereas typically when people retire, they sit back and watch TV and do less brain exercises. So just encouragement to do more. This is something that's been fairly new. The glymphatic system. They didn't teach me about this in medical school for sure, but the brain washes itself at night during deep sleep. Your brain will swell up, and there's these little channels like lymphatics that will wash your brain. So sleep is important to help prevent dementia. Is kind of the point of this. And deep sleep is important. So part of our program is making sure people are sleeping. And the circadian rhythm here, we see that during the daytime it's important to get sunshine, bright lights. And during the evening it's important not to get bright lights. There was a study that in Colorado, people that had insomnia, they took them camping for, I think, 10 days, and every one of them, the insomnia went away because they got back to the natural cycle. We have bright lights, TV, excitement in the evening. Maybe you're going out to an exciting meeting like this in the evening, and you won't be able to sleep tonight. No. Probably sleep pretty good. So it's important to get bright lights early part of the day, exercise in the day. You don't want to exercise in the evening. Blue light blocking glasses if you're having trouble. Connie and I use those, and then that'll help block the blue lights. Read a book. Tell each other nice things, and don't start arguments in the evening. If you're going to argue with your wife, do it in the morning. Okay. So these are opportunities to reduce our risk. So this is how they come up with the 90%. So we can decrease our BMI if we're overweight. We can cut, if we're obese, we can cut our risk in half. We're not going to do this a day, but it's amazing. You can't do much in a day, but over a year's time, you can accomplish a lot. So you can normalize your blood pressure, cut it by 15%, improve your diet, cut it by 50%, regular exercise, you can cut your risk by 50%. And brain exercise, it's almost an unlimited, depending on time, effort, and your energy and motivation there. And improve your sleep, calming the mind. It's important to check your vitamins, make sure your vitamin D is okay, your thyroid's all right, and optimize all that if you can. Okay, so the pillars of the brain health are healthy diet, exercise, strength, brain exercise, sleeping, calming the mind, fixing defects, and avoiding toxicity. And the earlier you start doing this, the better. So I'm concerned that I give talks like this and everybody thinks it's great, but nobody does anything about it. If somebody whispers in your ear next to you now that I feel suicidal, so what is the question you whisper back to them? How can I help you? No. Why? Do you have a plan? Right, that's it. Do you have a plan? If they don't have a plan, you just tell them, Dr. Shields or somebody will be here on Friday talking depression, come on back. If they have a plan, then you worry. So it's the same way. If you've seen these things and if you say, well, maybe I need to buy some blueberries on the way home, you have a plan. So this is just the idea that you need to build habits. Changing lifestyle is about building habits. It's like planting. You start something tiny, you find a good spot in the soil, and then you nourish it. You start a tiny behavior, don't make it hard. You find a good spot in your daily routine, and you nourish the tiny behavior until it's firmly established. Just go through that a little bit quickly here. You plant a tiny seed in your garden, and you find a good place for it, and you nourish it and you grow it. And then, so you want to find a good place in your schedule, you need to start exercising. So do it after, say we're going to go walking after breakfast. So you buy some tennis shoes, you put them out after breakfast, and you walk around the block the first day. So you stack it by something else. You got to make it attractive. Maybe you can get your honey to go around with you. And then you make it easy so you're not getting discouraged, and you can build it. And make it satisfying. Maybe you write it in your journal. This just happens to be my journal. It's not really my philosophy of life. It's just the way they sell them. but you want to create, you want to make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. My hope is that you will have seen something that you need to change in your life, and you'll make a plan of some kind and start the plan. And inch by inch, life is a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. I like that. We overestimate what we can accomplish in a day or a week, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year, right? We're not going to. So I think that's the last one. So that's it, Nathan. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Allen. It's not going to be graded, but I'm going to actually go back because I really liked this presentation, and I want to ask you a couple of questions tonight. I'm going to get there. All right. This is the one I want. Healthy diet. Tell me one thing that you learned about a healthy diet tonight that you could plant a little seed in. Make it a habit. Okay, make it a habit. Excellent. So you want to make it a habit. What's a specific thing that you learned that you could make a habit? Christina. Okay, so that's, he talked about intermittent fasting. I actually do that. I do the 16 and, 16 and 6, I guess. I really like that because to me it's really easy. I just eat what I want in this window of time, and then after that I don't eat. That works really well for me, but different people have different, it's like some people when it comes to diet are rule followers and rules work really well for them. Other people are moderators. I'm not a moderator. That doesn't work well with my personality. So yeah, an intermittent fasting, eat in a certain window. What about a certain type of thing? Did anybody hear some kind of food that they say, you know what? I don't eat that, but Dr. Allen mentioned it, and I'm going to start eating that. Blueberries. Oh, you don't have to work hard to talk me into eating blueberries. All right. Did anybody else hear something? I want to incorporate this into my diet. Leafy greens. I love leafy greens too. Those are great. You know what I do, Dr. Allen, because I know those omega-3s are super important? I make a, and if you want the recipe, I can give it to you. I make a waffle almost every single day out of flaxseed. I use a quarter cup of flaxseed. That's a omega-3 bomb. Anyway, that's the main ingredient in it. Flaxseed, oatmeal. I put some protein powder in it, and I actually put an egg in it, so if I want to. Anyway, okay, so what about exercise? I like the point that it's both aerobic exercise and strength training. I thought that was a really good point. Brain exercises, learning something, working hard to learn something. Oh, that's a good one. Does anybody have something here they really always wanted to be good at but never took the time for? You want to learn a second language? Well, Ed, it's not too late, and we like you so much. We do not want you getting demented. So we're going to be checking. Who's going to check in with Ed, make sure he's learning his Spanish? Okay? Kelsey is. Good job, Kelsey. Getting good sleep. Ooh, I like the idea about the blue light blockers. Has anybody ever heard of that? The blue light. So in the morning, well, have you ever noticed this, that in the middle of the day, everything looks really bright. Greens look really green. But at night, the colors get more orangey. So the kind of light that comes from outer space from the sun changes throughout the day. And all organisms, literally every organism on the planet, it works on a diurnal cycle, a light-dark cycle. So when that bright blue light comes after the sunrise, that basically tells your brain to wake up. And at night, you get the warmer colors. That tells your brain to go to sleep. Well, guess what kind of light your computer and your television blast at your eyeballs? The bright blue light. And so when you're watching television or reading on a cell phone or whatever, that blue light is screaming at your brain, it's the middle of the day. And that makes it really hard to go to sleep. So sometimes people wear sunglasses, special blue light blocking sunglasses at night so that they can...
Many of our cell phones have blue light limiting.
That's true. The iPhone, I know at least the iPhone will turn the blue lights off for you at sunset. Okay, calming the mind, excellent. Fixing deficiencies, those are all really good. Thank you so much, David, Dr. Allen. I really appreciated that, and I thought to myself, well, Renner, you're doing some things right, and there's probably some things that you could do better too. So, well, have you ever heard the word shalom? Shalom. This is a Jewish word. It's a Hebrew word. Does anybody know what, well, probably all of you, or most of you at least, have a guess what the word shalom means. What does the word shalom mean? Peace. That's right. Kelsey, go ahead and play it. You might have even heard this song. It's a simple song. Shalom, my friend. Shalom, my friend. Shalom. Shalom, God's peace be to you, God's peace be to you, shalom, shalom. She's going to play it through one more time. Sing it with me. Shalom, my friend, shalom, my friend, shalom, shalom, God's peace be to you. God's peace be to you. Shalom. Shalom. I'm not a very good singer, but I really like that song. That's right, Eugene Margolis. Dr. Margolis, his first name is Shalom. I found that out when I looked his name up on the internet one time, and I called him Shalom one time, and he looked at me like I was crazy. But it was really fun. So the Jewish synagogue, the Jewish temple worship is really, really awesome. If you've ever been to Israel, you go to the temple on Friday night. Everybody's there greeting one another, singing and dancing, and there are people praying together, and there are people studying together, and there are people talking together, and it's this really festive time. And then on Sabbath evening, Saturday night, after the Sabbath is over, it's kind of it's a time of mourning, almost like, oh, this great day of rest is going away. But they greet one another with the word shalom. The word shalom means peace, but typically when we hear the word peace, we think of the absence of war. When we think of peace, we tend to think of the absence of war, the absence of violence. But in the Hebrew Bible, the word peace means so much more than simply the absence of war. Peace actually means wholeness. In fact, let me show you. Leviticus chapter 6, verse 5 uses the Hebrew word peace, shalom. Let's see if you can find it. All right, I'll read it to you, and you try to guess which word is translated from the Hebrew shalom. For whatever it was that they swore falsely about, okay, so somebody's told a lie, and that lie has resulted in some person's life being damaged. They must make restitution in full and add a fifth to the value of it and give it to the owner on the day that they present their guilt offering, okay? So if you tell a lie and you damage somebody's life as a result of it, you have to make an offering to God, a sacrificial offering, and then you have to restore that, plus you have to add 20% to it, okay? So which of those words comes from the Hebrew word shalom? Connie, I think I heard Connie say it. It's the word full. Now, let me read it to you again. They must make a restoration in whole. They must make a complete restitution. So this just gives you a little glimpse into what the word shalom means. When we wish somebody shalom, we're not just wishing them the absence of war. We are wishing into their lives complete and total wholeness. In every part of their life, relationally, socially, physically, financially. When we wish somebody shalom, we are wishing into their lives total, complete peace. So, can we do that for one another tonight? Can we just stand up and go greet somebody and wish total wholeness into one another's lives? Hello. Now, we live in this world that is so broken. We live in a world where we're ravaged by homelessness. We live in a world where fathers and sons' relationships are fractured. We live in a world where people who loved each other and pledged themselves to each other for a lifetime come to the place where they can hardly stand to be around each other. And I'm not throwing rocks when I give these illustrations. I'm making the point that we live in a world that is painfully fractured, and there's not a person in the room whose lives have not been touched by the painful realities of this world. And there's nothing more than we need in our lives than God's peace and wholeness. Now, in the Bible, there was a man whose name was Solomon. Now, I want you to think about his name, Solomon. That name literally means shalom man. Shalom man. Solomon's dad was a guy named King David, and King David was a mighty warrior. And King David had this son, and when they named their boy, King David wanted something different for his son than he had for himself. And so he named his son, with God's help, Peace Boy, Peace Man, Shalom Man. Shalom man. We're going to talk about Solomon. And what we're going to notice in the life of Solomon is that rather than trying to build peace by following God, he tried to build peace in different ways. And it resulted in a lack of peace. Our first text tonight after Leviticus is found here. Solomon, this is saying, David called his son Solomon and charged him to build a house for the Lord, the God of Israel. David said to Solomon, "My son, I had it in my heart to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, but this word of the Lord came to me, you have shed much blood and have fought many wars. You are not to build a house for my name because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight, but you will have a son who will be a man of" what? Peace. So King David always wanted to build God a house, but God told David, you can't build me a house because you're not a man of peace. You've been a man of war. And so David had a son, and he named his son Solomon, and Solomon was going to be a man of peace and rest. And he says, God says, and what's this word here? I want you to notice this word, and I will give him rest from all his enemies on every side. His name will be Shalom Man, and I will grant Israel peace and quiet during his reign. Now, I want you to notice that God promised to be the one that gives Solomon rest. God promised to give Solomon rest, and Solomon actually began his life by trusting in God, and he began his life as a man of peace. It says in 1 Chronicles 22, verse 10, he will be the one who builds the house for my name. He will be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. Now we see here in 1 Kings that Solomon, when he began his ministry as an adult, he began his ministry really seeking God and trusting God to keep his promise. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want to give me to give you." And Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. What a way to begin your kingly responsibility. Your name is Solomon. God has called you to be the man that ushers in peace to Jerusalem. And by the way, Jerusalem. Guess what Jerusalem means? City of peace. God called Solomon, the man of peace, to be the one that brings the city of peace, peace. God is the one that called the man of wholeness to bring the city of wholeness back to wholeness. And Solomon begins that journey in the right place, from a place of humility, by saying, "Dear God, I am just a child. I don't know how to go in or come out. I don't know how to govern this people. God, give me wisdom." And in response to the humility of Solomon, God says that he was pleased. What a way to start. It goes on. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice." Now, this is a critical word. Discernment in administrating, what's that word? Justice. "I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among the kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and my commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life." While Solomon began his life in this way, Solomon didn't always walk the path of wisdom. In fact, shortly after we read this in 1 Kings chapter 3, we go to 1 Kings chapter 4, and the Bible says in 1 Kings chapter 4 that during Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel from Dan to Beersheba, Dan is way in the north and Beersheba is in the south, lived in, notice this word, what did they live in? Safety. Everyone under their own vine and their own fig tree. Now, I got a question for you. Does that sound like a good thing or a bad thing? What you should say to me is, "Preacher, that sounds like a trick question." Now, I want you to think about this. If God has promised shalom, if God has promised wholeness and peace, if God has promised shalom, if God has promised wholeness and peace, and you get safety, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Could be worse. Okay. You'd want to share. Okay. That's a good insight. I would put to you today that King Solomon figured out a way to get security through injustice rather than shalom through trust in God. Let me say that again. King Solomon figured out a way to get security through injustice rather than shalom through trust in God. Now, I'll explain that in a minute here. You see, because King Solomon, chapter 3, Solomon made an alliance with the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter, and he brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. Now, I want you to notice in the Old Testament, God had told his people Israel to not enter into alliances with other nations, and God had told his people Israel not to marry wives from foreign nations. So King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 3 has already, even though he began on a path of wisdom, he has already wandered from the path of wisdom by entering into alliances with foreign nations. Now, I want you to notice the outcome of this alliance. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places because the temple had not yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the instructions given him by his father David. Now, I want you to know that next line. Except he offered sacrifices and burned incense on the high places. Now, I want you to notice King Solomon starts off right by asking God for wisdom, but then he quickly makes a wrong turn and enters into an alliance with a foreign nation, and he begins to marry foreign wives. Again, notice what happens in 1 Kings chapter 5. In 1 Kings chapter 5, he enters into an important agreement to begin to acquire luxury items from a foreign king named Hiram. Hiram heard that Solomon's message, and he was greatly pleased and said, "Praise be to the Lord today, for he has given David a wise son to rule over this great nation." So Hiram sent word to Solomon, "I have received the message you sent to me and will do all you want in providing the cedar and juniper logs. My men will haul them down from Lebanon to the Mediterranean Sea, and I will float them as rafts by the sea to the place you specify. There I will separate them, and you can take them away, and you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal household." In this way, Hiram kept Solomon supplied with all the cedar and juniper logs he wanted, and Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, in addition to 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil. Solomon continued to do this for Hiram year after year. Now, this verse, I've read this verse a million times. Well, that's an exaggeration. I've read it many times, and I never realized what was going on in this verse until recently. King Solomon has entered into an economic agreement with this man to receive luxury goods, and he has to be able to afford to pay for those luxury goods. How does the king of Israel pay for luxury goods from Hiram?
Gas tax.
Okay, the gas tax. Okay. He does what all kings do, what all governments do. The government pays for everything through taxes. So we read this verse today and we blaze right by it, right? He decided to buy a bunch of stuff from these people, and then, because he's buying a bunch of stuff from these people, he's going to pay these people. That's the way it works. We blaze right by it, but what we miss is that in order to be able to do this, he actually ended up enslaving his own people. Notice this. Solomon had 12 district governors over all Israel who supplied provisions for the king and the royal household. Each one provided supplies for 1 month in the year. Did you get that? He divided the land into 12 quadrants, and each one of those quadrants was responsible for giving 1 month of their income to the government of King Solomon. Here's the account of the what? Forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Okay, so he's got a massive building project. What do we call forced labor? Slaves. Now, the whole story of Israel began with an oppressive ruler enslaving his people, and God saving his people from those oppressive enemies. And now the very king of Israel is enslaving his own people so that he can buy luxury goods from Hiram, so he can live in an amazing house, so he can have everything wonderful. In fact, what's fascinating here, where it says in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 13, King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, 2,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month so that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Now that statement, Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Ooh, I'd hate to be that guy. You know, I'd hate to be that guy, because the word in charge of the forced labor, that's the same word used in Exodus chapter 1, verse 11. So the Egyptians put slave masters over them. It's the same word, slave masters. I don't know if you know enough about the Old Testament story, but God's people are in Egypt as slaves, and they're under the Pharaoh's hand, and they're being oppressed in forced labor, and God raises up and delivers them through Moses, and Moses leads them into Joshua leads them into the promised land, and in the promised land God raises up the king, King Solomon, who is to be the man of peace, the man of wholeness, the man who brings wholeness to Jerusalem, the city of wholeness. And instead of bringing peace and wholeness, he builds alliances with foreign nations, and he begins to oppress his own people. And instead of bringing them wholeness and peace, he gives them security. Do you know what? I don't want security. I want wholeness. You know how I can have security? I can surround my house with armed guards. You come over here, we'll shoot you. Okay? I don't want security. Security is second best. I want wholeness. Solomon entered into alliances with foreign nations to get security when God wanted him to bring wholeness. Wherever I've moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of their rulers whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, why have you built me a house of cedar? This is God speaking. It's so funny. He's doing all of this stuff and building God a house, and look what God says. What does God say? Did I ever even ask you to do this? I didn't ask for this. Now I want you to notice, at the root, King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonites, and Hittites. These are all marriages designed to create alliances with foreign nations. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them because they will surely turn your heart to their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth, 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, for his heart was not, what does that say? Fully devoted. Do you know what word that is? Shalom. This verse is amazing. Solomon, the Shalom man, did not bring shalom because his heart was not shalom with the Lord his God. I don't know, this is kind of a nerdy sermon, I'm sorry. It's nerdy because it's based on the Hebrew language. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope you're getting the message. You've got this man that God raised up to bring peace, and he didn't bring peace. And the reason he couldn't bring peace, he could bring security by marrying these women and building alliances with these nations, and he built security by oppressing his people, and he built himself an empire, and it was an amazing time for Israel. but their security came at a big cost, and the big cost was they missed out on what God wanted to do, which was something better than security. It was shalom. It was wholeness. God wanted to bring them wholeness, and the reason he couldn't is because the leader was not whole himself. Now check this out. The reason God could only bring security and he couldn't bring wholeness was because the leader was not whole. So the solution to this problem is to get a leader that is a shalom man. Does everybody follow that? You ever play follow the leader? Okay. People follow the leader. When the leader's good, the people are good. When the leader is whole, the people are whole. So the solution is to get the right leader. Now I want you to notice the book of Isaiah. Isaiah is predicting the coming of the Messiah. The coming of the Messiah. And notice what it says. It says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government will be on his shoulders. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father." And look at this last one. Prince of what? This is a prediction of the coming of Jesus. Guess what? Jesus is the true shalom man. He is the true man of peace. He is the true man of wholeness. Do you follow me here tonight? We have this Solomon trying to bring peace. And how's he trying to bring peace? Oh, hey, I'm going to marry this woman, and we're going to be at peace with her family. And I'm going to marry this woman, we're going to be at peace with her family. And we're going to enter into economic alliance, and we're going to work all of these angles to make the world safe. And all he brought was security, but he never brought wholeness because he wasn't whole. Isaiah predicts that there would come a time where a whole person would come, a person who is whole in their heart, in their life. Jesus is the man of peace. He's the shalom man. He is whole, right? There was no deficiency in you. There's a deficiency in me, a lot of them. And I'm guessing there's a deficiency in you. There's a lack of wholeness in all of our lives. It could be a wound that we're still carrying, a wound from a relationship gone bad, a problem with our children, a problem with our spouse, a problem with our parents, a problem with I just couldn't be the person I needed to be in school, a problem at work, a disappointment. There's a lack of wholeness in all of our lives, and then we come to middle age, and our body begins to give out, and we're worried about our minds giving out, and we're worried about like, wow, my mom and dad are gone, which means I'm next. And we're missing that wholeness. And so we seek ways to make ourselves whole. Like Solomon, right? We forge an alliance with the doctor. But the truth is that the only way we can be whole is by embracing the man of wholeness. In John chapter 5, Debbie, in John chapter 5, verse 1, there's a man who's wrestled. John chapter 5, verse 1, he's been having a lack of wholeness his whole life. He's been crippled, and he's been waiting by this pool of water. In verse 2, it says that there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate. And we're going to just read John 5 verses 1 through like maybe 7 or so, Debbie. So Jesus is walking through Jerusalem. I've walked through the sheep gate. And there, when you walk through the sheep gate, there's this pool. And there's this colonnade there. And there's all these invalids, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. And there was a man who was an invalid there for 38 years. And Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time. And he said, do you want to be healed? Now, I got news for you. That Greek word healed, if you're used to the King James, okay, the King James says, do you want to be whole? You might remember, if you've been around the Bible a while, wilt thou be made whole? That's King James. The man of wholeness, the man of peace, is come to this man who's sick, who's hurting. I mean, can you imagine being paralyzed your whole life, sitting by a pool of water, just hoping that if you could get in that water, you might get better, and you're paralyzed, there's no way for you to get in there, and everybody around you is so stinking selfish that they jump in before you when the water is stirred. You follow? And Jesus, the man of peace, the man of wholeness, the man of shalom, comes and he says to him, do you want to be whole? And he responds, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going in, another steps down before me. Do you see what he said? I got my way of getting better, Jesus, and it's not working. It's not making me whole. I'm trying here. And Jesus answers him, get up. John chapter 5, verse 8, 9, and 10. We may be having a technical difficulty, but I sprung this on them, so don't blame it on them. Get up, take your bed and walk. And at once the man was healed and took up his bed and walked. Okay, church family, here it is. The man of wholeness, that same man of wholeness that was walking by the pool of Bethsaida there, that same man of wholeness that was walking by there, and he's looking at this man who was longing for wholeness. He was looking at this man who was longing to be complete. The man of peace says to that man, do you want to be whole? And that same Jesus is walking through here today. Do you want to be whole? Do you want that wound in the bottom of your heart? That wound with your child, that wound with your parent, that wound with your mother, that wound with your father, that wound that you're carrying, that sickness, that disease, that fear, that anxiety, that challenge that you're having with your spouse. Do you want to be whole? Because the man of wholeness is here tonight. Here's how you get whole. You don't trust the political ruler, Solomon, and his alliances. And you don't trust the magical bubbling water. You trust the man of peace. You trust the man of wholeness. And when he says, do you want to be whole? You say, you know what you say? Yes. And you know what he says? Take up your mat and walk, buddy. Your time has come. Your time has come. I want to invite you to bow your heads tonight. Is there anybody here tonight? I'm going to ask in Jesus' name, is there anybody here tonight? You can bow your heads. I want to give you a private moment here. I want to ask you a question tonight. Is there anybody here tonight that is struggling with some lack of wholeness? Might be physical, might be mental, might be spiritual, might be emotional. I don't know what it is, but somebody here tonight is struggling with a lack of wholeness. And the man of peace is walking through this place. His name is Jesus. And he says, do you want to be well? How many of you want to raise your hand and say, you know what, Jesus, I hear that, and my answer is yes. I want to be whole. I invite you to raise your hands up tonight and just say, yes, Jesus, I want to be whole. Lord, you know the wounds of your people. You know the pains of the people in this room, and I want to pray for them, God, that the man of peace, Lord Jesus, that you would bring liberation to our hearts and minds tonight. Lord, that anxiety about our kids, that anxiety about our parents, that anxiety about our sickness and disease, that anxiety about that emotional wound, that anxiety about our marriages, and that anxiety about our singleness, God, all of it, Lord, we lay it at your hands because we know that Jesus is enough to make us whole. We pray this in his mighty name. Amen. Thanks for being here tonight. I really hope the liberating grace of God has come into your life. Tomorrow night, we have another lecture, health lecture. We have another message of hope and healing. I really hope you can be here. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. God bless you. And on your way out, make sure to wish one another shalom, God's hope and healing and wholeness in each other's lives. Blessings.